Looks like I'll be able to access the tappets, so I'm going to adjust them too. But I only had about a quart of gas in this. Anyway, I'm going to blow it out a little compressor, wash it with hot water, and then put some of this in it and try and clean the rust. Got 2 gallons of evapor rust in there, so I'm just going to let that sit for a day or so, maybe until tomorrow morning or tonight. I'll check on it tonight, but that's what I put in it. And I also found a bunch of bolts and stuff. I found got a brass float. I got one of these that's there's nothing wrong with other than it's dirty, and this just happens to be the this is the brake side. Okay, but anyway, I got bolts and fasteners and stuff. There's a couple missing fasteners, so I can go through all my bolts and stuff and find what I need. Everything in here is from past Honda motorcycle projects. And I got a pair of used mirrors, so I can put a mirror on here. And anyway, let me get the tank cleaned, and when I rebuild the carburetor and the petcock, we'll video that. You can see the inside of the carburetor is pretty darn clean. This is the, I'm going to put this float in it. It's a brass one. This one was in it, and it doesn't, like, I can squeeze it and no gas comes out of the joints. Usually that's how you tell if they're bad. But you know, if they absorb, well, maybe this one does a little bit right in there, but what happens is these absorb gas and they get heavier and your float level gets deeper. Sometimes these usually don't totally sink because one or the other usually will keep it floating. But all it takes is one to get a little gas in it and you'll have a deeper float. I try and avoid these floats and try and always go with brass ones here. And yeah, I can shake it, there's nothing in it, so that's a good float. But anyway, I put some of this stuff in it. This stuff works really good. I put some in the spark plug hole. I ran the engine on it to get the goo off the valves. So you crank it up and then you spray this in while you're giving it a lot of throttle. It smokes like crazy, but it really cleans the carbon and crud off the valves and frees up the guides and whatnot. But I think why the tank is off, I'm going to adjust the tappets because I can get right at them. So I think I'm going to work on that. To set the valve lash, I got to take the dynamo cover back off, and you set it on T, which stands for top dead center, and then the F mark, which is the fire mark. So that's fire and that's top dead center. And the fire mark is where the points break open when you have the timing set correctly. So I got the valve covers off. I think it's a 8 or 9 millimeter. It's an 8 millimeter wrench to loosen the tappet. And I think the exhaust is 3 and the intakes are 2. This is the exhaust side. So let me check the gap here. I got my feeler gauges out here. This one appears to be a little loose. You can see the arm move as I shove the gauge in there. And this one, yeah, they both feel slightly loose, so we'll tighten those up. You can see anyway, they won't take much. One of them was ticking, and I suspect it was probably this one because that one's loose. The gauge fits in there. Both these arms are like together. They're on the same, I don't think that shows up in there, but they're on the same shaft and they're kind of together, so you can't move them separately. Let me see if I can video this. So I took my gauges, and this one here, that one was about 6 thousandths and this one was about 9 thousandths, so they definitely needed adjusting. And this is the 3 gauge, and as you can see, it goes in there nicely, moves around, goes in there nicely, and moves around. So I'm going to say the exhaust tappets are set. I think this is the one that was ticking because it had a big gap. You could clearly hear a tappet ticking in it. So let me do the intakes and then we'll call it tappets adjusted. These ones are a lot harder to get the gauge in there because of the frame. I don't know if I can get the video gauge and video it in here, but anyway, that one was spot on, right on 2,000, and that one, this one was about 3,000s. So I just snugged it up a bit, but the valve lash is all set now, all adjusted. Obviously, this is the one that was ticking. Valve lash is all adjusted, covers are back on, and I even cleaned the covers up, as you can see. So we'll clean all this stuff up once the engine's out, but these are shinier typically than these, so that's why I shined them up. Look at the coil and the condenser, and you can tell this is definitely a low mileage bike. Yeah, that evaporust is definitely working. We'll let it soak a little longer till it looks all good in there, and then I'm going to put the cap on and set it upside down for a while too. So I cleaned the tank out with that evaporust, and there's still a little tiny bit of surface rust in here and there. Anyway, it's not bad. It's cleaned 99% of it up. So I'm just going to put the evaporust in again and let it sit overnight again. But yeah, I think it's going to clean up pretty nice. Well, hopefully I can show this. Anyway, the inside of the tank cleaned up really nice. There's absolutely no rust in it now, zero, and I cleaned all the gum out. I cleaned it, I drained the gas, cleaned out lacquer thinner, and then I put that evaporust in it for 24 hours, washed it out with hot water, and then I rinsed it out with lacquer thinner again, and it still had some rust, so I put the evaporust in it for another 18 hours and just cleaned it out, and it's spotless. There's zero rust in there. It's a little marks and staining, but zero rust. Moved a big step forward today on the XL250. I got the tank, as you saw. That's clean. I don't know if I showed this in the video or not. I brought my XL175 home, so if I showed it, sorry, I'm showing it a second time, but yeah, I brought that home, been riding it. But I went to the paint store today, spent $250 on painting supplies, so I got the hardener for the paint. I think I have some, but maybe not enough. I got, this is the orange, and I put a dab of orange right here with my finger from the lid of the can. That's a perfect match. This would be the metallic, whatever this is, like a matte gray black kinda. That's what this is. It's called Frozen Deep Gray, and it's got a metallic. Now this is kind of dull, so when I put this hardener in it, it tends to bring the, you know, make the paint gloss. It hardens it, makes it glossy. So probably what I'll do is I have flex agents somewhere around here for like painting plastic bumpers, which I'll have to use on the fenders, the flex agent. If I don't have it, I'll have to go back to the paint store and buy some, but I gotta eventually go back and get this color match too. And I got the silver blue, whatever you want to call it. They call it Havasu blue, but that color there is a perfect match, and I put a dab with my finger right here and got a perfect match there too. So I'm really happy with the paint matches. So that's a big step. I have a 1.5 gallons or so. I buy the black, gloss black and gallon cans. I think there's a fresh gallon right there, and there's a partial gallon right here, because a lot of things that you paint have black on them, and so I go through black quite a bit. But yeah, he gave me a bunch of sticks. The sticks and the filters they don't charge for, but the paint they get you with that Yeah, paint isn't cheap anymore, and I like acrylic enamel because it's durable, it lasts. And so anyway, there we go. We got most of the paint for the bike. The only color I'll have to get matched now is this. And like I say, if I can't find my flex agent, I have to buy the flex agent, which is, you know, be another $100. But because they only sell it in a quart, they don't sell it in these smaller cans anymore. And but you put the correct amount of flex agent in. See how these are plastic, and when they move it doesn't crack and peel the paint. And if you put too much flex agent in your paint, it flattens it or dulls it. So I'm thinking, you can see there where that is where I touched on that nick there. And it's a good match, but I think it'll dry shinier. So I might put flex agent in this color and get a little heavy with it so it dulls it a little bit, gives it that hazy flat look. And so that, you know, that's the problem with acrylic enamel, is no matter what you do, if you use this, it glosses it up. So if you have a flattened paint mixed, it's going to gloss it up. So like I say, this is either going to be more glossy, or I'm going to have to overdo the flex agent in it. But that was a big step, getting the paint. And I bought a 5-gallon can of lacquer thinner because I just ran out of my 5-gallon can cleaning this. I put lacquer thinner in this after I drained the gas out and let it soak for an hour or two. Slashed it around. They got all the gum and scummy stuff out and cleaned all the rust off of petroleum products. And then Evapor-Rust cleaned all the rust out. And then I rinsed it with lacquer thinner again after the first Evapor-Rust and got even more crud out of it. So I put the Evapor-Rust in for a second time, and the inside of the tank has no rust. I put my inspection camera in there, and there's no rust, no dirt, no nothing. It's clean end to end, top to bottom. And so the gas tank issue is resolved. And like, you know, I'm going to have to paint it because I'm going to have to pop these dents out, and it's going to require a little body work, and there's going to be little hammer marks, and you know, it's going to need a little filler here and there. And I'll get these decals ordered up in the next day or two. And but first things first is I want to get the bike together and running and make sure ride it and work all the bugs out of it. I don't want to have to be working on a restored bike. I want it, you know, perfect condition mechanically when I do the work on it. And I'm waiting on the carb kit, so when this kind of stuff starts coming, I'll look at the corrosion on this float has been coming off with that engine tune stuff, and it's turned the tuner green. This stuff works. This is the best stuff in the world for cleaning old gummed up, and it's for 2 and 4 strokes. So if you have a 2-stroke and it doesn't run, you can use this, and it'll clean the carbon, the rings, free up the rings, and you can run your 2-stroke on it because it's got lubricants in it. So I ran some through the carburetor on this while I was running, so it gets all on all the valves and guides and stuff and cleans them. And then I took the plug out and sprayed a bunch down in the cylinder. And then you just kind of keep things wet and let it soak, do its thing. And doesn't take much, and just kind of let it soak, and that casting will look like brand new inside and out when I put it together. Well, I got the carb kit, so let's start rebuilding the carb. This kit comes with everything: main jet, needle seat, everything, basically the whole, everything that's needed in the carburetor, adjusting screw, the works. So let me get this thing cleaned up and together with the new kit. Sorry for the fan noise, but it's still we're getting in the midst of a really bad heat wave. I got my little AC unit on in here, and it's 75 in here, but I've been working in the yard, so that fan feels good. But anyway, this thing looks pretty darn clean. I don't think it's going to take much to finish it up here. Everything is Whistling Dixie clean. Yeah, there's no crud on anything. This is as far as I'm taking it apart. It's really clean, and that's what holds the main jet in. This is for the float pin. That's the float drain. This is the main metering jet. It's got lots of little holes. Make sure they're all clean. All the fasteners that holds the needle and seat in. This is the old bowl gasket, and it's just really, I don't know if the little cracks. It's obviously the original one. The original float kit comes with a new float. Comes with this part new. That's the idle mixture screw. That's the seat, float seat, main jet, and we're going to take a look at the new one and compare them for size, and the little needle for the float. So that's the old parts. When we get the new parts opened up, we'll get this thing together. So this thing goes in here, goes up in there. I'll have to get a little something to push it in. There we go. So you can see, sticks up through the throttle thing there. I don't know if you can see it in there or not, but it sticks up in there. And alright, let me get all stuff together and we'll get the float set and get it running. New bowl gasket, new float, new adjusting screw and spring, and the O-ring for it. This is the little idle thing. Float pin. This is the pin that attaches to the slider, and the clip, I'll reuse the one that's in there. This, and unless I have issues, then I'll change it out. Needle and seat, and the top gasket. So this is what I want to compare is the main jet. I want to see if the original one, oh yeah, it's been hogged out. I don't know if you can see the, yeah, I don't know if that shows up, but it's definitely been hogged out. And I think that's why the bike ran slightly rich. I mean, just ever so slightly. Like if it was a lawnmower engine or 1/4 turn in on the adjusting screw and smooth it out. So I think that'll take care of the issue. Yeah, I don't know if how well it shows up, but not only is that hogged out larger on the original one, but it's kind of egg shaped too, so they didn't even hog it out evenly, but hopefully that fixes the issue. Well, this was a bit of fuss because that needle and seat is spring loaded, and I put a piece of hose on there so I could blow through and tell when it's seated and that. So what you want to do is you want to just kind of hold your float so it just touches that pin. See how it drops down more as I tilt it? It's pushing that spring, and you want that float to just touch the pin without pushing it in any. And then this is what I set the float at. Is that focused? Can you see it? Anyway, so then with it just touching, I got both the floats exactly right. So everything is set to factory specs on this carb, and hopefully that new main jet will keep it from running too rich. And I'll blow through the hose here. There I can blow through, and there I can't. So it's all ready to put the float bowl on and reinstall on the bike. There's the little thing that holds main jet in place. Well, I'm not gonna lie, the seal that came for the float bowl in this kit is garbage. Yeah, I tried gluing it in. I've tried several things. I think I'm just gonna reuse the old seal. This is just a nightmare trying to get it to stay in that groove. I've used bellows adhesive, used silicone. I've used 4 or 5 things and have had to take this stuff and clean it off each time. And like I say, this is going in the garbage, and I'm gonna put the old one back on. Carburetor is 100% assembled and ready to go back on the bike. Pretty easy to put on and off, so you got to put these cables back on. I guess I'll put this one on first, the lower one, it's easier. And then the upper one. And then I got to fasten this bracket to the carburetor. Alright, I gotta go get my Phillips screwdriver. Anyway, you get the kind of get the picture, and then the choke cable goes in there and goes on there. So now you can kind of see how that is assembled. It's pretty cut and dry and simple. This bracket here holds the fuel hose thing, and that's just 2 O-rings on that, and that kit did not come with O-rings, so I had to dig around and find O-rings for that. And I did find an O-ring that fit in that better and glued it in, so that's got a new O-ring. But yeah, that O-ring that came with the kit, which the kit said was the correct one, definitely did not work. Anyway, the carburetor just pushes in. I need 2 hands, and then the air cleaner, no big deal. You can kind of see how it pushes up in there. Then this clamp, just the end clamp, is what holds the carburetor to the engine. So yeah, that's essentially installed the carburetor. I installed the air cleaner correctly. I put the bolt in there that holds that. This is all on good. There's a hole here for a bracket here that I'll have to hunt up, but I put a bolt in it so it doesn't suck dirty air in there. And I'm going to put the cover on, and as soon as it stops raining, I'll take it out and we'll crank it up. It's going to smoke like crazy because I got a bunch of that power tune in the cylinder. I sprayed it in while it was running, then I pulled the plug and sprayed it down in the spark plug hole too. So yeah, it's gonna, oops, just dropped my hose here. I gotta hook this up. There we go. And anyway, yeah, it's gonna smoke, so I'm gonna wait till I can get it out when it stops raining to start it. It's been storming like crazy. Storming like crazy out. So I took the gas valve off and took it apart. These are all parts from it, and I'm waiting on the rebuild kit. But this tube is for the regular on, and then that is for your reserve. That little hole there. But this tube is cracked all the way down to there, so you won't have much of reserve. So I found a couple pieces of tubing, and one of them easily slides over it, and the other one just slightly fits tight. So I'm going to cut the tubing off down here, and I'm going to blast it clean or clean it up, and then I'm going to solder this tubing to that length on, so it so I have a reserve, so to speak. Now that I bead blasted it, you might be able to see the splits in the tube a little better. I think they show up at the top. Yeah, it's pretty much all broken in half. I can just open it up, and it's cracked all the way, like I say, right down to the bottom, so there would be no reserve fuel. The measurement length of that tube is 2 3/4 inches right on the dot, so we're gonna make it the exact same length. I cut that off right down to where the crack ended, and I just kind of flared that out a little bit, and that fits over that nice and snug right down to the base. I was going to drill it out and try and push this tube in, but I don't know if I can seal it up good enough. But anyway, I'm just going to solder it with my Weller soldering gun. Will do this job just fine. Once it gets hot, it'll suck that solder right in. Yeah, it's hot on the one side, but it's not hot on this side yet. That appears to be fixed. I grabbed it with some pliers and really twisted on it, and then I plugged the hole and blew, and I don't feel any, plugged this hole and blew into the tube here and didn't feel any leaks around here, or didn't feel like I could push anything through. And I guess if not enough gas will flow through that to keep the carburetor full, so if it runs below this tube, I'll still have this for reserve in my gas. Usually that's about a half a gallon in reserve. I think the tank's 2.5 or 2 1/4 gallons, something like that. The 175, it's 1.5 gallons. I got 1 gallon on, a half gallon reserve, so I can go 100 miles on the on and 50 miles on the reserve. I ended up ordering a new petcock. There's supposed to be a little filter screen tube that comes out of this that goes up so high. So anyway, I got that coming. I'll put this one back on for now and just not use the reserve position on the fuel tank so I don't get crud from there into the sediment bowl. So basically what I've run into is I can't figure out what's wrong with this bike. It just runs rich. It idles rich now. I rebuilt the carburetor. I got a carb kit for it. The carburetor's spotless. Absolutely, I can't find anything wrong with it. I've had it apart 11 times now. The float level is set within thousandths of an inch of the correct level. All the jets are whistling Dixie clean. This thing's like better than new clean. I mean, it's spotless, but yet it sits there and runs rich. So anyway, I put points in it, 2 sets. I put 2 plugs in it. I've set the timing twice, done the valve lash twice, pulled the muffler, checked the ports. I obviously looked at the intake why that was off. Nothing wrong with the ports or the valves. Checked the muffler to see if it was plugged up. Shoved my inspection camera. Watched the valves move, both front and rear intake and exhaust valves. They work perfect. Nothing wrong with them. I can't see any plugs in the muffler. Now my camera went dead as I was shoving the thing up in here, so I won't have any video of that. But I shoved it down this end. The inside of the muffler doesn't look plugged up. Maybe Sunday, if I get time, I'll pull a cover back off there, off the dynamo, and check the key, the flywheel key, so to speak. That is the flywheel in there, and check that, make sure that hadn't sheared. It was running perfect. I was out riding it, it was running perfect. The next day I started it up to go for a ride, and it was sitting there running rich like the choke was on. And I haven't been able to get it run any other way since. And I'm to the point where I'm about to give up. Yeah, this is getting me stumped. I've never had an engine performance issue like this. It just runs exactly the same. Like I say, I've had the carburetor apart 11 times. So I don't think it's anything mechanical in the engine. I do think it's fuel. I do think it has to do with the carburetor. The gas tank's clean. My petcock kit hasn't come yet, so it leaks. So I got to drain the tank every time when I'm done horsing with it, which is kind of a pain until my petcock kit comes. And you can see I don't know if but I cleaned it up a bit, but yeah, that's just really aggravating. So anyway, I'm gonna maybe Sunday, like I say, check the flywheel key. I ordered supposed to have a 120 main jet. The jet says 120. You can clearly see somebody hogged it out because it's egg shaped. The kit came with a 110 jet. I changed the idle jet, and then that made no difference with the one from the kit. I put the stock one, the one that came with it, which is a number 45. The idle jet's supposed to be number 45, and the main's a 120. So it's got the hogged out 120 in it now, though when I put the 110 in, anything over half throttle was just, might as well turn the ignition off. The engine just died with the 110 in it, just not getting enough gas at the higher RPMs. But idling was sitting there loping and blowing black smoke and just not running good. So anyway, I've had this thing 100% apart, soaked it, cleaned it, absolutely no crud in it. Ran wires through all the jets and looked at everything. I can't find anything wrong with the carburetor. So, and I can take this screw out completely and create a vacuum leak, and it'll smooth out at idle. It's just been a nightmare, and I want it to run good before I go to take it apart and paint it. I'm glad, you know, this would be a nightmare if it was all painted up and restored, having to do what I'm doing here. So at least I can try and get it going right before I do the paint work. But anyway, I'm done ranting here. I'm just really frustrated. I think I'm just gonna forget about it for 4 or 5 days and just let it sit here. Maybe, like I say, Sunday I might check the flywheel key. It's got good compression. The valves, like I say, everything on it checks out mechanically. The points, I put 2 sets in. I cleaned the original ones up and put them back in. I put 2 brand new sets in. So actually 3 sets of points now, you could say. And the timing was spot on each time when I checked it. And top dead center, the flywheel is at top dead center, the piston's at top dead center, and everything looks good. So I don't think the flywheel key's sheared, but you can shear it a degree or two and have a engine performance issue. So that's why I'm gonna pop that off and have a look at that before I go any further. I mean, might as well, right? I mean, how many more times do I take carburetor apart and get nowhere with it? It's just a waste of time continually taking it apart. After 11 times, there's nothing wrong with the carburetor. It's something else. So I'm just gonna sit here and horse with it. It acts like the carburetor. It runs like it's a carburetor issue, but I just can't get it to run right. And like I say, the inside of that, there is nothing in it. It's clean as a whistle. You can see where I hit it with the camera. That was the exhaust. This is the intake. I think these valves are open. If I can get the other valve, there's the other one. So anyway, if any of you have any experience with these things and might have some thoughts, leave a comment. And if you like the video, hit the like button. If you like my channel, that 348 engine icon will subscribe you. And thank you for watching my video.